Well, this webinar is part of a series that's designed and organized by the Politics and Policy and Transition National Working Group. And it was designed to share successful models of policy approaches and political engagement that local transition initiatives and other community groups can take to begin transforming their local economic, social, cultural, ecological, and political systems. And each webinar is devoted to a specific topic or example and hosted by the people centrally involved in it. Last month, I believe, we had an excellent webinar on public banking with David Cobb, who's a member of our group and also part of Cooperation Humboldt. And there's a recording to that now on our website. If you missed it, you can go on the right-hand side of the Transition US website. You'll see online training archive. And we generally have recordings of all or most of our webinars there. So check out the one on public banking if you missed it. It was very interesting. And today we're learning about the Eco Vista project, our newest transition initiative in the Isla Vista community of UC Santa Barbara. And today we're hearing from two of the organizers on that project, John Foran, who is part of our Transition Politics and Policy Working Group. And John is a distinguished professor of sociology and environmental studies at UC Santa Barbara. He teaches courses on climate change, climate justice, activism, and movements for radical social change, and systemic alternatives beyond capitalism. And man, I would love to be in those classes. He's a scholar activist in the global climate justice movement, the center of the struggle for achieving social justice and radical social change in the 21st century. His work is published at resilience.org and can also be found at the International Institute of Climate Action and Theory. He's an active member of Transition US, Democratic Socialists of America, System Change, Not Climate Change, the Green Party of California, and Symbiosis Revolution. His transition passion is to work with others to turn the community of Isla Vista, adjacent to the university, into a transition eco-village named Eco Vista that we're going to hear about today. And joining him is Jess Alvarez Parfrey, who has a background in community organizing, nonprofit fundraising, and environmental activism, formerly with Greenpeace USA. And Jessica prides herself in forever seeking transformative opportunities for radical collaboration and community co-creation. Jessica has also served as a board member and current president of the Isla Vista Community Development Corporation, which I think we'll hear more about today. Having formerly served as the president of the Family and Student Housing Tenants Union at UC Santa Barbara, Jessica worked to mobilize community assets and infrastructure to support UC's system-wide goals of addressing campus food security and sustainability. In pursuing a systems-level approach to problem-solving and solution design, Jessica has amassed a diverse body of experiences as a non-traditional student, mother, dreamer, activist, researcher, and communicator. Jessica received her BA in Environmental Studies from UC Santa Barbara in 2018. She is driven to develop opportunities for meaningful dialogue, community-based strategy, and design informed by decolonized practice and methodologies. Thank you so much. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to the two of you.
Thank you, Jess. Thank you, Don and Marissa, first and foremost, and Transition US. I'm John Foran, and Jess Parfrey and myself. We are thrilled to be with you here, either live or in the future. My first task is to give you a kind of an overview of the flow that we have worked out for today. It has a few moving pieces. And in fact, we will start with a 7 or 8 minute video about Eco Vista, which will give you some ideas and some images and some music. And then you're going to hear from several Eco Vista organizers who are on the call. We'll each have a spot to say something about what it means for them. And Jess and I will follow that with brief, sort of slightly more formal presentations. at which point we'll open it up to everyone for a brainstorm and a Q&A, and we look forward to that very much. So that's the flow. Hopefully there'll be ample time for that conversation we want to have. The next piece you're going to see is a film by Sierra Emmerich, who graduated UCSB last June and made us a video, which will give you a great introduction, I think, to the project. I want to thank her for making that and point out that she did that as a project in a class in less than 8 weeks. And it's just a wonderful introduction to Eco Vista. Over to the video. Thank you.
I've always felt there's been something wrong.
I have a general feeling of injustice in the world. And I was like, wow, like, we're so corrupt. I'm just really pissed off, exploited purely for the profit of a wealthy few in the oil industry.
The number one contributor to our climate crisis.
Catastrophe. People wake up. We are frustrated. Students, workers, young people, old people, so many of us are frustrated. We have been told we have just 11 years to massively change global energy infrastructure and consumption, yet we aren't seeing any action on the part of our current government to act at the scale we need. Out of this frustration, out of hope for a better future, out of desire to do something, and on a quest to have fun and better our well-being and lives while transitioning is the reason Eco Vista was formed. But key to creating the future we want is understanding our past. The area of land, now known as Isla Vista, has been home to many types of life. Originally inhabited by the Chumash Native Americans, IV saw a peaceful time, where there was no division between people and nature. Instead, people were a part of the land, air, and water, and saw their health and happiness directly connected to the health and well-being of that land, air, and water. In terms of IV sustainability, this was the golden era. But just like the tides of the ocean pushed in and out, this type of living was pushed out when Spanish missionaries forced a new way of life and thinking on IV's first inhabitants. And the tide of harmony further retreated as various men claimed ownership of IV, thanks to the Mexican land grants of 1842. Land was subdivided and sold from person to person. Water pipes, electrical lines, sewage systems, and roads were brought in to develop IV. And then there was war, World War II, which brought the U.S. State Marine Corps to East IV, where a station was built to train air pilots and store war supplies. To make way for a new Isla Vista, sacred Chumash cemeteries were bulldozed to fill the Goleta Slough. The nature and soul of IV was slowly consumed by America's need to expand and conquer, all in the name of progress. Eventually, this progress led to the conversion of military airstrips into the Santa Barbara Airport and existing buildings into UCSB. Rapid development and not a lot of zoning led to the densely packed Isla Vista we know and kind of love today. In the 60s and 70s, frustrated students, youth counterculture, civil rights, anti-war, and peace movements led to a fiery explosion of resistance in Isla Vista. Literally fiery. We burned down the Bank of America. We marched and protested through campus and demanded an environmental studies department after the '69 oil spill. People were pissed, and tensions mounted as Greater Santa Barbara sought to suppress IV's counterculture ideas. Student groups tried to organize to create civic responsibility, but political tensions dissolved any attempt IV made to gain independence and govern itself. But change did happen, and when the tides receded in IV, some rocks like IV Recreation and Parks District and the Food Co-op settled, and are here to stay. Tragedy has walked this land for decades, removing the heart of IV, but we have accomplished some beautiful and incredible things too. As we keep moving forward in time, it's our responsibility to love this place and make it better for everyone and everything. Welcome to Isla Vista. The crisis we face today can be hard to talk about, and the way all our problems are tangled together, interrelated, and connected makes them seem even more overwhelming and huge.
People are just concentrating on one issue and they blend out everything else. They can fight for racism, but they don't care if they use plastic cups.
They look at this problem and they're like, they shut down. They don't have nothing to do with it.
But it's also exciting and empowering when we come together and achieve small victories. Ivy is currently making changes on a small and large scale, from community gardens to divesting from international fossil fuel infrastructure. Unfortunately, change will be slow.
I think like change is going to be frustratingly slow, and it's going to be stuff like sunrise and like direct action to stop lobbying and get people-funded politicians in power. And I think it's going to be so frustrating, and I'm not even sure it's going to happen in our lifetime. Just going to be, I don't know, one step at a time, one institution, and directing a huge amount of people power at a really small step, making sure that's done, and then go to the next one.
This film set out to show people what Eco Vista could be and what the future of Isla Vista could look like. But after speaking with UCSB undergraduate and graduate students, professors, and Ivy locals, it became clear there is no cohesive future for Ivy and Eco Vista.
How are we going to survive?
There were worst case scenarios.
And it's not a scientific problem at this point. It's a social problem.
Best case scenarios.
We have an Eco Vista free thrift store, keeping a circular economy going and zero waste.
Revolve's mission is to empower the local community to invest collectively.
We know that we have the solar capacity.
To a sustainable economy, both for planet and for people, we have the know-how to make the transition. People have been working on transition my entire life. We have to have a much more systemic view.
And it's people power that's going to actually bring about the change we need. What our communal passions are going to be. How do we foster those?
Cultivate sustainable shopping in a way where we recirculate donations in our community, combat the fast fashion industry, and also to destigmatize thrifting.
We don't have to necessarily make stuff up out of the cloth. If we have real communities around us, and actually be able to persist.
The beauty of Eco Vista is that it doesn't have a set of ideas of what Ivy should be. Rather, it's a creative platform for the community to explore and realize their sustainable dreams.
Thank you, everybody. Apologies for the somewhat glitchiness. This is a feature of Zoom that we are coping with. So I did send everybody the external link, and it's a beautiful film with a very clear sound and feel to it, which I urge upon you to take a look at in your spare time as well. The program right now is we have two Eco Vista student organizers extraordinaire on the call, Ash Valenti and Olivia Adair, and we wanted to give them the floor to give you their 2 cents worth on the experience, starting with Ash.
I don't know if I'm ready, but okay. Hello. What? I thought Jess was gonna go first. Or you. Hi.
Sorry, Ash. Yeah, there was a little confusion about who would speak first. Would you like Jess and I to go first and then you guys to close before the Q&A?
Well, I think you two would do a better job at introducing the promise of Eco Vista. And then, right?
This is how we make decisions. Sort of, we make them up as we go. In fact, that's one of our mottos. Do it yourself and make it up as you go. Sure, I'm happy to do that. Jess and I allocated ourselves 4 or 5 minutes to kind of give you some kind of introduction each. There's lots of ways to talk about it. There's the origin story, which I love to tell, about Jess and Valentina Cabrera coming into my office hours in March of 2017 and pitching to me their vision of what became Eco Vista and capturing my imagination on the spot. And then myself working Eco Vista as a project into classes I was teaching starting right away in spring of 2017 in a class conveniently called The World in 2050, Systemic Alternatives. And ever since, in a variety of my classes, spring, fall, winter, and summer, since, it's usually been a class project. And that has been one of the ways in which the first participants became involved, because out of each of those classes, which sometimes are as many as 200 people, people step forward and say they really want to do this work, such that now we have a small seminar type group of about 25 that meets every Friday, now over Zoom, from noon to 3. And we are now holding our bi-weekly, it's every 2 weeks. We have a meeting called the General Assembly. And until just now, with the coronavirus, that meeting has been in one of the parks, the beautiful parks of Isla Vista, which are astonishing little gems in this crazy place of half a square mile and 23,000 people. There's a lot of green space that's precious to us. And then the ocean is no more than a 5-7 minute walk away from where anyone lives. So needless to say, it's an unusual and a unique community in so many ways. And each of us brings to it not only that origin of sort of introduction to the idea, but our own personal histories. And for me, you can see from the classes I teach, I've had a long-standing desire, not only in changing the world and hopefully inspiring others to do that as well in their own way, but finally, as of 2 or 3 years ago with this project, I found what I was really looking for, and which really students were looking for, which is to go out into the world, out of the classroom, and try and make change in their own community. And that's pretty much what Eco Vista does. We encourage you to go look at the website to get a sense of the variety of things that we do. We're divided into working groups on various projects. We have a website that shows all of that and more. In fact, you can see the film we just watched on the website as well. That's one other way to go find it, at ecovistacommunity.com. There's several things I think that are unique about this. Having come to Transition US maybe 3 years ago, although teaching about transition towns for a couple of years before that, I realized that there's no usual transition initiative in the US out of these 160 odd, so to speak, experiments. But the usual is in a community that is not mostly students or overwhelmingly students, 80% as we are in Isla Vista. And so it seemed like we might be sort of modeling something new and hopeful that could be replicated again in their own way at other college campuses, and that was a way to sort of regenerate a new model of transition based on young people, based on teachers who are teaching sort of theories of transition and systemic alternatives, working together in their community right where they are with the other community members, because it's not an all-student project, it's a multi-generational cross-student community member adventure. So we think that that's a unique feature of what we're doing that we think could scale outward and build a network of such communities ultimately, not just in the US, but as transition itself globally, hopefully, because we think there's a huge untapped sort of reservoir of desire, and better to speak to that will be the other speakers on this call by their generation. And I just feel very fortunate to have sort of stumbled into this adventure, thanks to Jess and Valentina, and now continued with some 250 people that have been through the process and are on our listserv, and the 25, 30 people who show up for 3 hours on a Friday to make plans and support each other. And I think I would end with saying that in this moment of the Corona crisis, surprisingly, we've been very, very nimble and able to survive and thrive because we are a group that's used to meeting on a regular basis, and we sort of are into the technology of it. And it hasn't really did what we're doing except out in the streets of Isla Vista. Pause that'll continue forward by thinking of those things that we never got around to and preparing ourselves for what comes after, whatever that might be. And I'd like to pass the stick, as we say, in transition to Jess.
Thanks, John. Thanks to everybody on the call here today. And John mentioned the origin story of Eco Vista, and I think it's something that I've been spending a lot of time thinking about, just as much as I'm thinking about its future and ability to scale across and inspire transformation in other college or student-led communities. So I think what's important about the origin is that Eco Vista, or what would become Eco Vista, the spirit was kind of brewing before Valentina and I walked into John's office. Our particular experiences as students and engaging with the institution, to be honest, we were a bit frustrated. I myself had returned to university after some time away. During that time, I had gotten married, worked for Greenpeace, worked for some other, gotten that life experience, became a mother. And then returning to the university, I just found that my desires and intention for my life's, path or story, it just felt like I encountered a lot of obstacles to being able to do the hands-on, immediate, and urgent work that I felt so called to do. And I won't speak for Valentina's experience, but we definitely resonated in that. And just this feeling of frustration, we're hearing all of this really unsettling information about the state of our future. And I'm a mom, I was a non-traditional student. And to be perfectly honest, a lot of these universities are still not compatible with just the diversity of experiences that we're all carrying here. So we approached John because John, one of the things I love the most about John as an educator is that he helps us to question these lines of who is the student and who is the teacher. And I think that's a really important thing to think about right now, especially as a lot of folks are having to adjust and engage with their university coursework in a very different way now. So I think it's like an immense moment right now as we're thinking about the future of Eco Vista and all of the projects that we hope to connect with. How are we reimagining our institutions? And as was pointed out in the video, like people power is what we're going to need. And just thinking about the immense human accomplishment that our universities and colleges represent, it's crazy. So I think we have all of the tools, we have all of the know-how. What we need is a safe space to gather and to unleash our imagination, and to have access to infrastructure and resources to deploy and prototype. So Eco Vista has always been an experiment. And I think that's what is really exciting about it, is that the story is unfolding and emergent based on who's engaging with it at that moment in time. And the way that we engage with our past and our story, the way that we're writing it as we go and who we're talking to, that is the excitement that we're building. And I think there is a growing desire for a new kind of way of becoming educated and becoming of value to a society, that we're not calling into question everything. Like oil prices were negative. That's crazy. That has never happened before. So we are in uncharted territory, and Eco Vista is the ride. It's exciting. Let's see. And I don't know if, like, Ash, I'm looking at you.
You. I guess I can say that I like to think about just transition and Green New Deals a lot, and how the best way to do that would be from the bottom up, not the top down. So Eco Vista is a place where we can come together and brainstorm what that could look like in our community. There is a lot of sustainable stuff already happening here. So I think of people being involved in the sphere of Eco Vista, even if they don't connect with us directly, because there's already, everyone here has a bicycle. Our composting and community gardens has taken off, especially in the last few years. What else? Circular economy. There's a lot of pop-up thrift stores and a free box that's been here for decades. Yeah, so Eco Vista is a promise of an opportunity for us to get together. We're working on how we can confront the issue of housing in the long term, but we will need funding for that. So if anyone knows about grant opportunities or anything, let us know. All right, Olivia, do you have something?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Olivia. I'm a junior transfer student majoring in sociology at UCSB. So I'm pretty new to Isla Vista. I only moved there like end of September, and I'm actually now back at home. So I didn't get to spend too much time there my first year, but I love the time that I did spend. I like to think of Isla Vista, I was just thinking about this the other day, as it's kind of like the perfect summer day to me. That's just the feeling that Isla Vista gives me, as someone who's fortunate enough to live there. I got involved with Eco Vista a few months ago, and I love it because it's community-based projects with like a clear cause and effect, and that's just how I think. And so I really appreciate the way that we work together. Isla Vista is an amazing place. I think people underestimate the power and the presence of young people, and so we have a lot of potential. Jess actually called Isla Vista, and I wrote it down, Jess, because I liked it so much. You called Isla Vista a living laboratory. And in a lot of ways, it is. It's growing, it's dynamic, it's full of really educated, fun, excited people. And so I'm really excited to see how the presence of a program like Transition Town will affect Isla Vista, and how Isla Vista will affect a program like Transition Town. That's it for me.
Thanks, everybody. We're ready for a conversation. And I'm going to turn things over to Don to turn things over to you.
Okay, so how we're going to do this is I'm going to promote you all to panelists. And please just, if you can access the chat, type H into the chat to indicate a raised hand. If you are on phone, type *9. and I will call on people in order. So I'm going to promote you to panelists now. This will take a minute because I got to do it one by one. But we should see more people coming on the screen. If you could just mute yourself until you're called on, that would be great. If you can turn your video on, that would also be great. You can do that by clicking on the Start Stop Video at the bottom of your screen if you're on a computer. *6 is mute and unmute on the phone. Okay, so we're about halfway through. But we really wanted to do this to be able to see everybody, to be able to hear voices. So anybody, if you want to add a comment while we're waiting here for everybody to come online, please feel free.
Perhaps Chris Cratcha just joined us. He's a first-year student deeply involved in Eco Vista, and I wonder if Chris wants to say some words.
Hi, John. I can say a few things. I've been working a little bit more on just like the scientific side of Eco Vista, trying to see like how much food we would be able to grow on the soil there, and like how much is open. And then also a few things about the businesses in Isla Vista, trying to get them to consider more sustainable practices because it's almost all takeout. But yeah, I've been doing a few technical projects with Isla Vista, and I'm really excited to continue into my 3 more years of college. Thank you, John.
So we're almost there. We just got a few more to go. It'd be nice if any of you've got poll at Zoom and can get them to create a feature where you can promote everybody with one click. That would be great.
This is David Adamson out in Boulder, Colorado. And I was wondering if I could ask a quick question about whether community land trusts have played any role in your work there.
I'll jump in. Community land trusts feature heavily in the Eco Vista imagination and ambition. That's something that has come up. There are a lot of folks in the greater Isla Vista area, as we like to call it in Santa Barbara County, that are really interested in this work. And then I also just want to connect that to this growing interest in public banking. So yeah, definitely on our radar.
Is there one there though? Is there a community land trust that you're actively working with?
Not right now. We have the Santa Barbara Land Trust, and most of the land that they're preserving is not to live on. It's, to preserve for future generations to enjoy, but they could be a potential ally and partner.
Great. So we'd love it if more of you were able to turn on your video. That should be in your main Zoom toolbar. And then just helps us to put face with the name. And I will be calling on people who have raised their hand in the chat or using *9 on the phone in the order that they are received. We have a couple already. Robert Perry, would you like to ask your question live on the air? Otherwise, I can read it out for you.
Oh yeah, I'll ask it. I live in Goleta, which is actually the community adjacent to Isla Vista, and been there all my life. I was actually a student at the elementary school when the bank burned, so that gives you an idea of the history that I have, and very very aware of the unique characteristics of IVs, particularly the influx and exodus of a large number of students that come in and out of the school during the year. And you know, it's an interesting idea, thinking of developing sustainability within a community while also, you know, anticipating, you know, the not only an ingress of all these people, but then during the summer, you know, it's just the permanent residents. And what do you do with energy and food and things like that? And how can you kind of manage that to anticipate the fall when the students come back and all that stuff? It's an interesting, you know, challenge.
So who wants to field that one?
I just want to give Bob, who's just asked that question, a lot of credit because he's involved in a community energy project, actually, as a member of the World Business Academy in Santa Barbara. So I just want to say that, and there is community energy. Actually, the city of Santa Barbara just opted for a form of it. Goleta, interestingly, is in another catchment area going all the way to Monterey. They've chosen their version of it. And it's, of course, a movement that's catching fire, bad metaphor, everywhere. We're not at the point where Germany is, where really communities have control and on a local scale. We'd love to get there, but that's, you know, as anyone would imagine, we cannot do everything we would like to do. And we are enmeshed in much larger forces that both constrain us and yet give us opportunities. So not to wander too far off the question, but having a world-class research university right next door on which to draw is pretty good. I wish there were more faculty doing this work, but they're doing all kinds of work. And for example, there's a project afoot to make Isla Vista carbon neutral by 2025. So we're in a race with Copenhagen to be the first major city in the world to have that distinction. And in fact, we have a project also a little ambitious to become a sister city of Copenhagen. And Jess is thinking and working about that. So that doesn't answer your question, Bob. It kind of puts it back to you as more knowledgeable than myself. The energy question is not something that we've done a lot of work on in IV, and it has to be said that, you know, 80% of the residents get to school on foot or bicycle. So we kind of have that little bit of the commute down to a very fine art, although we want to do better and get rid of cars in Isla Vista, partly because there are no sidewalks in much of Isla Vista, partly because it was developed in a very wild way by private developers when the university took the land. And it's always been held at arm's length by the university on the one hand, and sort of subject to university and county government on the other hand. And there's a big story there I'll let others tell about Isla Vista getting its first local government 2-3 years ago. And that's changing the game here. So there are resources we can tap, there are offices we can run for, and we can talk about gaining actual political power in this community because of the nature of it, which is quite extraordinary as well.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on one of the points you made, Robert, about having this like natural cycle of students coming and going. And I think there's some really useful thinking that we can borrow from like a permaculture perspective. So how does this problem of having all of this knowledge and excitement and energy invested in Eco Vista as it leaves, how do we turn that into a solution? So I think that's something that we're going to get better at, but the idea that as students engage with this project, they're primed and ready and have experience to go wherever they may go and take those skills with them and share them. I think there's a you know, a spore effect that could happen here, and to get the institution, to get the university to value that, I think that's something we should definitely prioritize.
Great. Does anybody else want to speak to that? Or otherwise, we have a few questions in the stack. Okay, so again, you can just type H into the chat to be added to the stack. We got some time here, so we'll be able to take a number of questions. I next saw David Takahashi. And David, I was wondering if you want to ask your question on the air.
Yeah, my question is, has Isla Vista considered cold turkey, where you say overnight our inputs from the outer world are gone, and we need to really get into this learning laboratory? I'm thinking of the Cuba experiment and the special time.
Can anyone speak to that? There's a great documentary about the special period in Cuba. It's produced about 15 years ago now, called The Power of Community. That's still a great watch, very informative.
It's a good point, because now we're all living in a special period, and Cuba in that respect is a model of how to do agriculture without fossil fuel inputs, how to get quote unquote ordinary people involved in growing food. All of those things are relevant and resonant with what we'd like to see. I wanted to say something else, but I can't remember, so I'll pass by.
Well, I don't think we'd be able to do that. That would be nice. We do have a lot of fossil-free gardens and fossil-free transportation and a growing amount of solar panels in the area. But I don't think the local, energy systems would let us do that.
That's a good point, Acid. I also wanted to kind of get around to is that Eco Vista is about 40 active people right now. And we're not in a position to speak for the whole community of Isla Vista. We have a lot of outreach work to do and a lot of alliance building with the many existing excellent organizations that exist in Isla Vista. And part of it, again, is a kind of internal network strategy where we make contact, we bring more ordinary people to conversations, and we bring different organizations, some of which have been around for a long time. There's a fantastic food co-op, kind of world-renowned almost in Isla Vista. There's a set of co-ops, cooperative housing, that grew out of student initiatives, and is now the best housing deal by far in Isla Vista. There are horror stories to be told about the landlords in Isla Vista, and I'll just tell the one I love to tell, which is a 4-bedroom place on Del Playa, the street right overlooking the ocean. On the ocean side of Del Playa, 4 bedrooms in which live 15 people, 4 in a bedroom and 3 fortunate ones in the other bedroom, and they pay $19,000 a month for rent. A 4-bedroom, not deluxe building, admittedly on the ocean. But that's a kind of story that everybody has to tell, and the co-ops are a way to do that, to solve that, because the rent is cheaper, they're less crowded into a single room, and they do bulk food provisioning, and they exist as a functioning co-op. If only we could get more control of land or housing, we would make all of Isla Vista that way.
Yeah, I just want to echo that point about cooperatives and just taking a look at the economy that exists here in Isla Vista. It's a very small space and it can feel somewhat like an island, but we do depend on a lot of inputs. And I think localizing our food system, like Ash mentioned, recognizing that we have immense assets with all of these gardens everywhere, and building that network is something that has been on the Eco Vista radar and has been a big focus, is on food. I think that's a good place to start.
Okay, I think we have 4 or 5 more questions right now in the chat. The order is Marissa, Lynn, David Cobb, Maggie O'Hanlon, and William Much. So first, Marissa. Well, I can ask Marissa's question.
Marissa is muted. I think that's the problem. If she can't unmute, maybe that is a problem.
All right, let me just find Marissa's question again. How can we adapt the transition model to be more appropriate for supportive of young people who are often less rooted in a specific place and also face significant challenges around home ownership, student debt, etc.?
Yeah, I would say, how do we create jobs for folks who are passionate about doing this kind of work? My first engagement with the Transition Network, I had a conversation with folks who had started an effort here in Santa Barbara and learned that there was somewhat of a divide between some of the older generation of folks that were more established and had access to those resources and had time to do this really important work, and then other folks who are just feeling the emergent immediacy of needing to switch into this new system. So if we can figure out a way to generate jobs and really provide for the folks that want to give their skills and their gifts to this work, that would be huge. It would be a big, big thing for us.
Because we'd like nothing better than for those people who have spent 3 or 4 years of their life living and building Isla Vista, Eco Vista, to be able to stay if they wanted and do the work and get paid for doing the work in a circular economy that we envision. And I don't think that's impossible. I think that in a job market, and now under a crisis of a job market, people with imagination and collaborative ways of working can work together to not just get hired by somebody, but to create a set of jobs that does good work in the world and allows them to live in a place that they love. And that's our ideal. And it's only the imagination that limits us. If Rob Hopkins were on this talk, he'd know what we're talking about.
Indeed. All right, so we have Lynn next, and then David. And Lynn, if you could just be as concise as possible with your question, that would be much appreciated, because we do have a number of other folks.
I think you're muted.
Oh, sorry, can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay, yes, I'm just wondering how to get organized to bring in the sort of more of a constitutional programming of our constitutional rights to bring our country together in the towns, but also how to get a new age, I call it WPA, for evolving consciousness communities, so that we go to the heart and soul level, and green, of course, projects I put in there, but how to get the money reallocated going to big ag, big pharma, the penal industrial complex, drug wars, the military industrial complex, reallocated using the internet with the churches, spiritual groups, green groups, and all the caring activist groups, so that we can take over the legislation. We make up the legislation and new banking programs and systems that we're working on individually but collectively. And so really how to get the people to understand heart and soul-based community service development with a good basic guaranteed income, with single payer, with healthcare, instead of worrying where you get a place to live, you get your basic income, and you get healthcare. Why can't we get that through to people and shift all of those systems? Thank you.
Great, thank you. Big question. Who wants to start?
I'll jump in. Lynn, I want to thank you for asking that question. I think it's important that as we're doing this community building work, we need to recognize that our existing system built off of a value system or a value framework that is really cruel. And I think that's being exposed right now by the pandemic and how we don't have healthcare for all of the people in this country and all of the inequities that go along with that distribution. So I completely agree with you. And I think by solidifying our values in these communities and demonstrating a proof of concept, I think we can get more folks excited and invested in wanting to see this happen and see it proliferate. I think it is possible. Anyway, I feel like we could spend a very long time talking about consciousness and all of that work, but John, I don't know if you have something you want to.
I'm actually typing in a link to the work of Michael Bean, the beloved participant resident of Isla Vista for many years. I'm astonished if David Cobb knows Michael, but not really surprised. Michael is one of a few people who in succession have had the informal title of mayor of Isla Vista, but Michael didn't want to be mayor of anything. He, an extremely brilliant and humble and lovely participant who was by our side all the time. He would actually come to all my classes. You can hear his voice in Sierra's film, where it's that classroom. He basically would, come to my classroom and co-teach the class. And so he's asking students questions and they're answering those questions. Probably that was last spring. So Michael gave us something that we simply call the source book, which he used to write his ideas down in tiny print on little pieces of stickum, and he'd give these to me. And in December, I gave him the impossible task of trying to put all of his ideas down into a form that we could all read, and we have that. And I'm about to post the link to that. And it's very much grounded in a deep spiritual, humanistic, universal rights of nature, interconnectedness and compassion orientation. And we're all in his debt, and we all try to live up to what he taught us to treasure and to aim for.
And I'll just point out that I posted a link in the chat to an article that I just published earlier today about a potential green stimulus for the United States, and encourage everybody to take a look at that. We have a great opportunity right now to boost support for building resilient communities throughout the country and forge some more high-level partnerships like the ones that Lynn is talking about. So we got David Cobb next, and then Maggie O'Hanlon.
Thank y'all. First, I really want to lift up and deeply appreciate the unequivocal decolonizing lens, both in that film and in everything I'm hearing. Because my assessment in this historic conjuncture moment is that we have an opportunity to set a new narrative and a completely new frame. And only by being as bold as Eco Vista has been imagining are we going to be able to really make the shift and the transition. So again, I am just so humbled and honored by what I'm hearing about that. I want to also get super practical, even as we're bold, because with 40 Eco Vistans in a community of about 23,000, it's very clear that y'all have the recognition that there's some deep community organizing and relationship work to do. And I want to submit that if you think about something practical, so not just the visionaries will approach you, but people can think concretely and tangibly about how they could benefit from it. And an approach would be to consider incorporating Isla Vista And as you incorporate to do it as a charter city of the state of California, you literally could write into your charter the rights of nature. Everyone in Isla Vista has a fundamental right to healthcare, a fundamental right to housing. I mean, you could literally create a constitution for Isla Vista that would be the model for the rest of us to sort of catch up with you. And you could literally in that charter write in eminent domain and take these greedy landlord bastards, pardon my language, but my mama taught me that sometimes profanity is the only way to describe profane things. And so like these landlord bastards who are doing this to you, you could literally strip them from their ability to own the land. And lastly, if you don't yet know Frank Sanate in Santa Barbara, he's the public banking colleague of mine in Santa Barbara. I'd like to get y'all linked, but it looks like from the nodding of the head, y'all are already connected. So again, thank you so much. And if you're interested in that incorporation chartering process, I'd love to just brainstorm with y'all offline sometime.
Just quickly, David, you're now an honorary Eco Vistan, and we invite you to write the first draft of that document and send it right down here.
Absolutely. I was going to say Frank has been on my radar, but I would appreciate an email connect. That would be awesome. Totally. Yes. Yes to all of that. Something that I've become aware of is some work being done across the country to create a community bill of rights. And folks have been able to prevent fracking in their communities using and invoking the rights of nature. And I think that's another movement we need to tap into. And part of Isla Vista's story, it's still unincorporated, but we are a special services district, was the fight for those that wanted us to become a city. And so there is some obstacles to take a look at, some challenges, but I think that's an awesome idea. I love that. And our county could actually become a charter county as well. That could be another level.
We definitely have our eyes on, slowly making some movement and opportunity toward political power in our community. There's going to be elections for the whole Isla Vista Community Service District in November. We hope to declare an Eco Vista party soon enough to participate in those elections, not as individuals, but as something new. And there's a whole long backstory to that where at least I've envisioned a new kind of party. We don't need another party. We need a new kind of party, one that comes out of and is directed by social movements and by community initiatives and alternatives. That would be a game changer. So we have our eyes on the IVCSD and their $1 million annual budget, which they also achieved in the last 2 years. And beyond that, the county of Santa Barbara County, we are an unincorporated part of that. And so the 5 county supervisors, in some ways, authorize, determine our fate in many ways. And I just want to give a shout out to Jess herself, who made herself a candidate for that process in March. And that was a game-changing moment and an inspiring moment for the students of Isla Vista in particular, to see that there was somebody who talked in a very different way beyond liberal environmentalism and way beyond incremental change. And that's another story to tell sometime, but we are on that wavelength. We want to go there and we want to make change.
Okay, so we have a few more questions from Maggie first, and then William Much, Theo Talcott, and another one from Robert Perry. That may be all that we have time for, but feel free to type H into the chat if you have a question, and we'll see if we can get to it. So Maggie, are you there?
Hi, I am a college student in Connecticut, and my university is like very far from being an eco village. But that being said, many students at my school recognize the importance of transitioning and are trying to push for that. And so I guess I was hoping for some advice from you guys as to how to start reimagining my community as an eco-village when we are so far right now. And then kind of first steps for like identifying places to start to begin that transition.
Maggie, thank you for asking that question. And I'm just like going back to my early experiences with Eco Vista, like trying to find different allies and folks that were at least willing to listen. You may not get everyone right on board to be like, yes, let's make this an eco village, but just identifying where there are resources or assets to tap into in your college is a good place to start. Do you have like a sustainability office or a department? Have you tried talking to some of those folks? So finding the allies that are most receptive, and then for those students, have you gone to like creating a club or just kind of institutionalizing yourself a bit?
Yeah, we have a few separate clubs going on that are all a little bit involved. But I guess our biggest struggle right now, I'd say, is just like envisioning what our like main goals would be.
Jump in, John, Ash.
Well, Maggie,
what about how we hosted like a day retreat and we use that to brainstorm things, right? Does anyone want to talk about?
Yeah,
we didn't.
You could also create like a coalition of all those organizations and try to like unite them under one cause, and like just having, like Ash said, a brainstorming day with everyone.
We had a retreat in January of this year after we'd been continuously operating for a year. Before that, it was a little more intermittent. And a year ago, in February of the previous year, 2018, we had a sort of a launch party, which was a celebration organized by the first 8 or 10 people in one of the co-ops. And we had music, and we had a free book share and clothes share, and we had inspirational speeches, and we all got to meet more people and grow in that way. But I want to say to you, Maggie, that this is a dream come true for us, because your college could be the second link in this network that we want to create. And I can speak on behalf of the Friday group there. You'd be more than welcome to come to our Friday talks and meet some people and really make some contact and relationships happen that way.
I guess I'll just jump in here to say that there have been many transition university initiatives over the last 14 years since this movement started. There's probably the most successful one is Transition St. Andrews in Scotland. I can put the link in the chat for that. Transition started at a college in Ireland. It started because of a school project. Rob Hopkins and his students at Kinsale Further Education College created an energy descent action plan. And this movement came out of that. So I can post a couple of those resources as well. William, are you ready to ask your question?
Sure. It's one was just a plug for the Sustainable Economies Law Center. If you are not familiar with them, they operate out of the East Bay in California, in the San Francisco Bay Area. I put their link in the chat, their website in the chat. They work with sharing law, and they had been also developing ways for cooperatives to rent and buy land as cooperatives, which I believe was prohibited in at least a lot of areas of California, if not the whole state. And they do wonderful work. The lawyer affiliated with them helped us draft the lease for our cooperative here in Saratoga. But also wondering, we've got a few housing boards who are based out of the East Bay and San Francisco, who specialize in working with cooperatives and intentional communities. We don't have anything like that in the South Bay, but and I don't have the expertise to build and run anything like that, but just wondering if you have anything like that down there. and or have you been collaborating with Sustainable Economies Law Center or other groups like them?
I'll just share that I'm aware of Sustainable Economies Law Center. I've checked out some of their resources, and I am involved with a group of other folks doing work to build a cooperative movement in Santa Barbara County, and we are looking to the Sustainable Economies Law Center for connections, but that would be an awesome organization to build more connections with.
And to come back around to Don's question, and thank you, Don, for pointing out the other transition initiatives around universities and coming out of universities. That's a very important origin story of transition that I think has largely been forgotten now. As transition is typically conceived as a community-wide kind of organizing adventure. We have an initiative, a working group at Transition US called Transition U, and we are meeting every couple of weeks. You can email me about that. And we're particularly looking for educators who are doing transition work to have a conversation about how to work with students outside of the classroom. And we've got people in that from university level, and then we've got people from K to 12 and even pre-K, and there's a lot of ideas. We're kind of in the mulling phase of how to go forward with this. But there's a lot of brilliant ideas coming. And the idea, again, is to create a network of people to share those ideas and to practice those ideas. Because really this word of network is a very simple word that's very powerful in my experience. It can be as simple as knowing two people that don't know each other and putting them in touch. And after a while doing this, you're just amazed that you're able to do that people don't know each other yet. Even in this town of Santa Barbara, I meet people that are fantastic in other circles after 30 years living here that open up whole new worlds to me. So that network strategy or form of organization is very much in my mind. And I recommend it to everyone, obviously. We all practice it.
Okay, I believe Theo had a question about stimulus bailout funds. Theo, are you there?
Sure. I was sort of making a joke, but I was wondering how are you going to use the recent Corona stimulus bill bailout to do what you were already going to do anyway? Just make a little joke. So many beautiful ideas, and the people we've been up against all our careers are now just in one fell swoop, just getting bailed out, paid off, their casino debts credited, and I just think it's just an incredible thing. So in general, we're a movement that's fighting for the earth. We're more powerful than we are as individuals. All these beautiful things we're doing all over the world matter, and I'm honored to be fighting with you all. So thank you for your work. I don't really have any more to say than that.
Does anyone know how we can make things like this more accessible to parents or other people who have accessibility or other life commitments thing?
I'll jump in. Some of the earliest work that I did with Eco Vista, I had to take my son to. When we would have students come to do community garden work, my son was there. And I just remember that a lot of students who don't get to interact with young children they're just like, this energy is so amazing. I'm so grateful to be close to it and like get to engage with your son. And so I just think we need to accept that bringing people from all different walks of life may be messy, but how do we make sure that we're centering care work and compassion? And Marissa, just separately, because I saw your question, I want to invite you. There's a Zoom call that I'm a part of with other mothers that are also organizers. And we're asking these same kinds of questions right now, especially around the Green New Deal. So how do we center that kind of work? It's an important question.
And Theo's question or non-question does, it focuses our attention on this terrible crisis that we're in right now, and how do we adapt to it? And of course, there's conversations all over about that, and people aren't just talking about it, they're doing it, and they're making contact with each other and sharing ideas, and it's very important. And I just want to say again, I think I said at the top of the hour, we're fortunate in many ways. Transition US is fortunate. Lots of organizations are fortunate if they can pivot to meeting virtually, as I think we all are doing. A lot can be accomplished, and not all that we would want, Theo, needless to say. Don't know what else I wanted to say. There was something, but peace back.
A couple things I'd like to interject, if I can, is, support the idea of green stimulus. There is a fourth round stimulus that's already being debated. Well, we can't change the last stimulus. We have an opportunity to influence the next one and to make it work for communities like Isla Vista and Eco Vista, for people that are doing community resilience building work. So that's one thing. Another thing I'd like to draw people's attention to, I put in the chat, is Transition US's Community Resilience Stimulus Fund. So we are asking that folks donate both to help cover a shortfall that Transition US currently has because of needing to postpone our national gathering this summer to 2021, and also to support community resilience leaders all over the country. So 50%, half of all the monies donated, will go to seed grants to support those in need who are doing great work on the ground. So if there's anything you do right after this meeting, I'd suggest checking that out. Going to that page, it's just transitionus.org/stimulus. And I see Ash asked about, is there a way to apply for funding? That will be coming on very soon. We're just finalizing the process to do that. And there's already, I think, about $3,500 available to apply for. And we're hoping to raise that number substantially in coming weeks.
Wow, amazing.
Great. So I think we have time for one more question. And I see that Robert has another question for us.
Yeah, well, it's not so much a question, it's just, it's a comment. I work in energy and environmental policy, and the wildfires exposed our vulnerability from an energy standpoint. This pandemic has kind of taken that issue and spread it across all the sectors. I've been working with a group of analysts. We proposed a bill this year that would require utilities to work with communities to integrate energy into the planning process, really bringing them to the table in a meaningful way. And I also listened to a speech given by Kate Gordon. She runs the Governor's Office of Public Research, and she was talking about the various impacts from the pandemic and the importance of being able to telecommute or work from home. These types of, and also the vulnerability to supply chains. And these all tend to kind of bring home the importance of having local resources, whether it be energy, food, or everything. So, I really think this whole situation really does, as has been mentioned, plays into the whole concept behind Eco Vista is having enough local resources to be able to withstand foreseeable impacts that are coming up. I mean, this is going to happen again. People have to realize that. The power shutoffs are going to happen again. We're going to have more of these types of issues, and we have to start planning for it. So that's just my comment.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think it should be said that the coronavirus situation has pointed out the lie we've been told that it's too hard to change our behaviors. So, yep, that's been pretty obviously exposed, and we should leverage that argument, right?
Looks like some nice weather where you are. All right, well, I would just like to give any of the presenters a chance to say any final remarks or resources you'd like to share. And then I just got a couple of quick announcements before we close.
I just put 2 resources in the chat with long URLs, but there's a film and a book. The book is free and the film is inexpensive, and we're watching them as I speak in my classes right now. And they complement each other very nicely, and they inspire people, and they teach us lots of things from other scholar activists around the world who have each contributed, especially to the book, Pluriverse.
Yeah, it's really good.
Oh, and that was my last point. It's like there's so many good things to look to right now. So many folks doing this kind of work, having similar thoughts. So in an era where we're contemplating something like the Internet of Things, how do we build the Internet of good ideas? So this network that we have access to is extremely valuable, and I'm just extremely grateful to have connected with you all today, and hope to continue to do that work with you.